Hello and welcome to My Vote Rocks. We've been trying to figure out what young India thinks about an entire range of issues, and that, of course, in the run-up to the elections. And we're going to be seeing how people are voting and what could perhaps be determining the factors that they vote for. And I suspect reasonably high on that list is the entire question of infrastructure. So we have an entire room full of young people and some very special guests. So let me start off by asking all of you, how many of you are intending to vote in these elections? So everyone else is intending to vote? What are the factors you're going to be keeping in mind when you're voting?
Well, I think, sir, it's very important that the leader who we elect is someone who does answer our needs. Because if the leader who we are electing is not answerable to our needs, then I think there's no point at all. I think that's one of the biggest factors of
So then today specifically what we're going to be looking at is the entire question of infrastructure, as to how important infrastructure is and whether that's something that people consider really important. How many people in this room think that the quality of infrastructure around you is going to be the most important or one of the most important factors in deciding your vote? Is that virtually unanimous? Why?
It's because the infrastructure of a country largely decides on how developed the country is, and in order to make my country of prime importance in front of rest of the world, I think infrastructure needs to be developed.
That's great. Let me start off by introducing all the special guests whom we have with us today on the show. Sam Miller, who's been here in India now for more than 11 years, British journalist. It's great to have you with us. Madhav has done a lot of work on infrastructure, so it's a pleasure to have you with us. It's an honor really to have Mr. Pathak with us, who's the head of Sulabh Shauchalaya. He's done an absolutely marvelous job in giving toilets in large parts of the country. Rajiv Talwar also with us, Group Executive Director at DLF. So thank you all so much for being with us on this show. Quick takes from all of you on the importance of infrastructure. Sam, is that the big thing which, I mean, you spent 11 years here in India. If you compare India with, you know, anything, when you are going back to the West, is it really the infrastructure question?
I think it's a huge question, and I think it's very interesting that young people if they are placing such a heavy emphasis on it. There are enormous challenges. The sheer scale of this country and the speed of urbanization mean that the cities in particular are under incredible stress to keep up with people's basic needs, let alone do things that we see in other countries that people certainly aspire to.
Okay, Madhav?
Well, I would agree with Sam. I think infrastructure, I mean, for an urbanizing population, at the rate with which we're doing this, it's very, very important, but I would place more emphasis on access to that infrastructure and what the nature of that infrastructure is. I think that is what is the critical question to ask.
Okay, fair enough. Rajiv, in India today, right now, and as we're going forward, especially for urban India, and actually for rural India as well, obviously, is it really infrastructure that should be one of the top items of attention for any of our politicians?
It should be, because infrastructure determines quality of life and the movement of the economy, and I think that's hugely important to everyone, including the younger generation.
Right. Mr. Pathak, let me get you in.
This is very important that you have infrastructure in the towns and cities. Only then you can function properly. So without that, you cannot go ahead.
Right, sir. So let me now start off by throwing up the result. Before I come to the audience again, let me start throwing up what the results of the opinion poll are. So we did ask people in this urban youth poll that we've been doing, conducted by Hansa Research. We asked them the leading question: will infrastructure actually determine your vote? So when you're going in to vote, and we've had everyone out here saying they're going to vote, and we know that the young vote may well determine this election in 2014 and also in the state elections that are about to come up. So we asked them this question: is infrastructure going to determine your vote when you're there in the polling booth? Here were the results, and it's startling results. 48% said it will be the single most important factor. When we are voting, the infrastructure and what the parties are promising on infrastructure is going to be the single most important factor that will determine which way we're going to vote. 50% more said it will be one of the important factors that we're going to keep in mind. So together, 98% said that their vote is going to be largely determined by the question of infrastructure. 2% and 2% only said it is not important. can I ask everyone in this room, do you by and large agree with that? You agree with it. So, okay, can I ask you then? It leads me to a question. If that's what young India feels, and actually I can tell you old India feels the same way, I have to say. But in general, if that's what you guys are feeling, why is it that political parties don't pay enough attention to this? Why is our infrastructure still weak? Who has some thoughts?
I think the politicians today, they are basically more focused upon paying the communal politics and, doing all these kind of things. I think infrastructure today is really important, when you're driving on the roads and, even when a sick person has to be taken to the hospital, you take him on the tuta-futa roads and, half of the health is deteriorated on the way itself. So we need good infrastructure.
Okay, you need good infrastructure.
Adding to that point, so we have got like electrification of railways going on, solar energy, renewable energy resources going on, but the point is that the basic needs are being not addressed, which is there, because when we go into the lanes, when we enter the colonies, the roads are there, only the highways and the main roads are built up again and again. So these are the basic problems.
And that's what you would like the candidates and all to come and talk to you about, okay?
I think they do have an emphasis on this because India is soon to become the largest importer of infrastructure goods. But what I feel is that what we lack in is follow-up action and the finishing touches to all the buildings which we made, and there is maintenance issues as well.
Okay, maintenance issues. Let me get one view from here.
The leaders don't pay emphasis on infrastructure is one of the basic reason, and the most important reason is that infrastructure doesn't directly relate to the people. We all need infrastructure because we want to say that we live in a good society and all that thing, but it directly doesn't affect us. What affects us is all the basic amenities like electricity, water and other kinds of things. That is why all these leaders and politicians try to get the vote bank on these kind of things by lowering the electricity rates and all that stuff.
Okay, so alright, so this is what politicians normally talk about in an election, right? They're either talking about identity politics, which was somebody said, communal issues, caste issues. Some people are giving away SOPs and others are talking about infrastructure. So that I think is really the shame. So let me ask all of you, how do you change this? How do you fix this? You'll be hearing 98% saying infrastructure is most important to us. But that's not what the politicians are necessarily talking about. They're talking about communal issues and caste issues and SOPs and hoping to bribe people with various things. How do you change that?
Well, I think it's partly about the extent to which people who care about these things are involved in politics. And the politicians really need to feel that those votes are going to go to candidates and to parties which are genuinely making an effort. Otherwise, they'll just carry on in the same old way as they always done.
Okay, so basically, what Sam is saying is that the onus is on all of you and on voters all across the country. If you actually go out and vote on the basis of what you say is important to you, that's the only time when politicians will take it seriously. Do you see that happening?
The emphasis on infrastructure is obviously there. There's no doubt about it. I suspect the problem here is that large demographic that has given up on even ever accessing infrastructure, they are never ever going to be touched by the kind of infrastructure that is actually being implemented. So while your survey might result in 98% saying, look, we want high quality, world standard, international standard infrastructure in this country, I think the problem is that is still a small portion of the entire voting population. I suspect that's closer to around 15%. 85% are still struggling for clean drinking water, access to dignified
But why
sanitation.
do you think that those people also would not still be voting on the basis of bijli, sadak, paani?
No, they would.
You could, maybe it's not world class, but the basic simple things like
Exactly.
drinking water.
This is exactly my point, that the focus needs to be on the very basic being kind of broad-based. So it's bottom of the pyramid accessing basic amenities, whereas the top can aspire to whatever they want to aspire.
Okay, Mr. Pathak, let me ask you, to your mind, have things already started to change? Because you do see an increasing number of politicians talk about issues around infrastructure, and broadly bijli, sadak, paani is around infrastructure. So we are going to be seeing this in these state elections, for example, whether it is Chhattisgarh or Madhya Pradesh or Delhi, you are going to be having the incumbents coming out and saying, oh, but we built you this flyover and we gave you these roads and we did do a certain amount of infrastructure development. So are things starting to change now?
Implementation of the programs or that is most important, that is not done on scheduled program, and it takes longer time. So question is not that we don't have funds to do, but there is no planning to do in time, and that is a problem, and there is no follow-up. So two things are lacking in this country, and therefore the projects are delayed not only months but year and year. So in the election, what the politicians should do and voters should demand, that whatever should be implemented, that should be on time, quality-wise, and there should be a follow-up. Suppose there are some potholes in the road, nobody is there to go to take care of.
Point well taken. Rajiv, in a situation where 48% of young people are saying it's the single most important factor, infrastructure, another 50% are saying it's one of the most important factors, 98%. The lessons in that are obviously not completely being taken by all politicians.
Vikram, I have 3 points for this. One is monitoring. I don't think there is real-time monitoring going on. Otherwise, how could the country allow $65 billion worth of gold to be imported in 1 year, which is 2/3 of the entire oil imports of $100 billion? We could have put that money into infrastructure and much more creation of maybe housing, manufacturing industries, or roads, bridges, canals, and that should have been really been monitored on a real-time basis. Number 2 is the expansion of bureaucracy. We are seeing wholesale expansion of bureaucracy, whereas what we need to do is to privatize more and more services so that the total impact on government spending is lesser on itself. And the third one is to change the mindset where every public-private partnership is not seen as a contract doled out, but is seen as a facilitator where infrastructure and execution get accounted for. And I think I have the example of Delhi, where electricity has been privatized. The metro rail has come in with a provision that nobody will go to court, and therefore the execution has been much faster than expected. And water availability has been more than doubled in the last maybe decade or so, and therefore the woes on account of basic infrastructure, which is either electricity, water, transportation, are much lesser than what we saw before. I think there is a need to monitor, plan, and then help in execution.
Okay, Rajiv, let me just try and figure out what is actually bugging a lot of people. So, what is the problem with infrastructure? So, we first of all started by asking people in the urban youth poll to actually rate India's infrastructure. How does it rate? And obviously expectations aren't quite as high as we would have thought, because this is what people felt. When we asked them to rate India's infrastructure, 12% said it was actually excellent. India's infrastructure was excellent. That was 12%. 43% said it was good. So that's actually a surprisingly high number. 55% feel it's between good and excellent. 38% said it was average, and 6% said it was poor. Now, before you completely shoot down the people who have voted in this manner, I think it has to be said that this is a youth poll, and the quality of infrastructure, and we could debate this for a while, in India actually has perhaps improved a lot in the last 10 to 20 years. So when we are knocking what's happened, there are a large number of areas of infrastructure where actually improvements have happened. When I was growing up, telephones were the single biggest issue. Trying to make a phone call to somebody was crazy. Can I just ask you all to react to this? Sam, are you surprised by that?
I am a bit surprised, but it may be telling. It may explain why there isn't actually greater pressure on it, because people are actually willing to put up with what is
substandard infrastructure.
Substandard. I also feel that there's a sort of almost a nationalism about it, that you don't want to say your country's crap at something, basically.
But that's not necessarily the case. And this
I'm
urban
not saying
youth,
it is. But
I'm saying the urban youth poll has been
surprise.
throwing up lots of things that people are saying that things are crap. So you know that's okay. Okay, let me just come up to the next one, then I'm going to come and get some views around. Biggest infrastructure letdowns. So what are the people the most disappointed with? Number 1, roads, 26%. Right, roads are people think are really let down about, and actually tying with roads is garbage disposal and cleanliness. The level of cleanliness on our streets, and garbage lying around, and filth and muck everywhere, and plastic bags. I so agree with you. So can I mean, metaphorically, can I come out and shake the hands of everybody who voted for that? I so agree with you. 17% said pollution, 11% said water supply, 8% said hospitals and schools. This is an urban youth poll, which is why perhaps power doesn't figure higher in that than I would have expected it to be, but that's what these people are saying. And let's just see what big towns and small towns are saying it. There is a difference. Small towns are really perturbed about garbage disposal and cleanliness. They feel that among the public facilities that are critical for comfortable urban living, in small towns, 43% said this is critical. You cannot survive without it, and I'm not surprised when you consider the state of cleanliness that we actually have. Mr. Patel, let me just throw that to you. We are getting an overall sense that people aren't as disappointed with infrastructure as we may have expected, but clearly garbage disposal and cleanliness is right up there, and that's what urban young are very perturbed about.
The most important thing we have left out, although it includes cleanliness, that sanitation and toilets, urinals, both important in this country, both urban and rural. So infrastructure, if you want to develop, without toilet facilities, urinals and so on and so forth, without proper disposal of human waste. In Delhi, you must see the outer skirt of the city, people are going outside for defecation in the open, and nothing is being done for that. So if you talk about infrastructure, it is necessary that first take care of about the toilets, the urinals and so on and so forth. The toilet is the most required thing in a city. If you go from one place to another, if it's a bad road you can go, but if you feel something otherwise, where you will go? And especially for women, there is no facilities in the city, in the towns. So the question is, those youths, they must consider this, that if they vote for the politicians in the election, they must consider toilet is the most necessary thing, and the demand of 21st century.
Yeah, so that's why Mr. Pathak, I suspect when you're talking about garbage disposal, cleanliness, sanitation linked to that, and that's one of the reasons why the cities aren't as clean as they could be. What do you feel, Rajiv, about the numbers that have come up? So garbage disposal, cleanliness almost in a sense heading the list of the biggest infrastructure let down along with roads, ahead of things like water supply or power.
Correct. I think that's absolutely correct, because people are today bothered about their health. In the urban towns and as well as smaller towns, people are getting more educated, and I think maybe some of us in larger towns who have been used to exclusive toilets over the years perhaps do not appreciate or understand the need for more and more sanitation, cleanliness for health reasons, as well as garbage disposal, which has become a kind of common sight in any kind of city, whether it's a large city or whether it's a smaller town. I think that is very true. The youth is absolutely correct that please pay attention to municipal civic services and sanitation facilities, otherwise they will have a telling effect on every facet of life. Of course, you've touched upon the fact that the youth have voted very well on India's infrastructure, excellent and good account for 55%, because perhaps maybe like you said yourself, telecom, internet, information technology, roads, transport, electricity, water in metropolitan towns or tier 1 cities is much better now than it was perhaps even a decade or a decade and a half ago.
Right, so some signs of improvement that you're talking about there, Rajiv, perhaps are being reflected in some of the other results that we have found, which again, like for example, water, something which I think was a really serious issue and still is a major issue. But if you're looking at it nationwide, when we ask people, do you get running water 24/7 around the clock? 38% said yes, 60% said no. But when we asked people what they felt about that how much water supply do you get at home? Is it adequate or is it not? 60% said, yes, we are getting adequate water supply at home. 60% said that. 31% said it's inadequate. 8% said they're having a severe shortage of water. Now, given that water is arguably one of the biggest crisis areas ahead, 60% right now are satisfied with it. Not across the country, it's not the same pattern everywhere. In Delhi, for example, obviously a lot of water scarcity. Only 34% said it's adequate. 45% said inadequate, 22% said severe shortage. So in Delhi, 67% really unhappy on that particular front. What do you feel about some of what we are showing up? The water and power in particular. Do you think the situation in urban India, Madhav, is better, is distinctly better than it was, or is this just a result of lower expectations?
No, I don't think it's a result of lower expectations. In your tier 1 cities, definitely over the past 10 years, there's been a marked kind of improvement. But again, I'll draw your attention back to the first thing that I said, is access to this improved infrastructure. I think what Mr. Pathak mentioned about sanitation, what Rajiv also talked about in terms of all of us having exclusive toilets, and therefore in our perspective, things are great. I think the crucial thing is to try and understand whether everyone living in our cities, urban youth, yes, but is everyone empowered to access these infrastructures? So is it all right for us to consider that everyone has an accessible toilet? Does everyone have access to municipal? You see, all municipal services are based on cleanliness and roads. That's the fundamental of urban planning. Everything is based on providing transport networks and sewage systems. But the problem here is a large part of our cities are actually considered illegal. So if one were to consider that many of us live under illegal status, they will not actually get access to these. So even though qualitatively, as we experience it sitting in our homes, which are legal, there is a marked improvement, but a majority of us don't really see that.
Okay, fair enough. Let me get a range of opinions from people out here on what we've just been discussing. Hands up. Okay, there you go.
I'd like to draw attention to something what he just mentioned. A week back, I was going back home by train, and on the way when I was peeping out, it was really sad. I was really sad to see around 50 people sitting in an area which was less than half an acre, and in the morning, like answering nature's calls. That was really sad. It was less than half an acre of area, and they're sitting in the open doing that. So it was really, I was really sad to see what was the reality.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm telling you a thing about like 2 years back. I'm from Sanskriti school, Chanakyapuri, which is called the Delhi's, embassy area, and which is like the most elite area. There, I used to see you talking about water, right? So there was a slum behind my school, Sanskriti school, and there used to like be a one tanker that used to come, and more than 2,000 people getting into the tanker and taking up water.
Exactly.
Many people used to cry and run away from there because they didn't have water, and the guy standing on the tank used to push them away. So I just have one thing, that why can't the government provide 2 to 3 tankers to 2,000 people up there?
Okay, fair enough. Let me get some more thoughts.
You know, we are getting out, even if just after we get out from the studio, we'll take a packet of chips and we'll throw it on the road. So the point, the onus for
cleanliness... Yeah, don't just blame the politicians, figure out what you do yourself.
It also depends on us. And one thing which bamboozles me is that we only take cleanliness in the metros, in the Delhi metro. Like once you get out from the Delhi metro, the packet of chips that you've been holding on to because you didn't want to throw it in the metro, you simply throw it on the road. I don't understand what's the difference.
That's an interesting point. You know, the same people who will not throw litter when you're abroad, you won't throw it in a place like the metro, but you'll throw it on the road. Let me take a break, but then I'm going to try and come back and find out the answer to what is really the major issues that are hampering Indian infrastructure. What are the reasons why things are not proceeding? And also, let me put this up on second screen. So remember, open the NDTV app. You have second screen out there. Tap in it and you can answer some of the questions. So one of the questions that I want you to answer out there, we've just heard the BJP's Prime Ministerial candidate Narendra Modi saying, and perhaps this is something which Mr. Pathak would, I'm sure, agree with, that it's more important to have toilets than to have temples. How many of you agree with a statement like that? Toilets are more important. Well, you know, I've suddenly had everyone here raising their flags and saying, so all of you feel toilets are more important than temples? So it's 100% unanimous out here. What do you feel out there? Open the NDTV app, tap on second screen and vote. Are toilets more important than temples? What do you think about that? We'll take the answer when we come back after this break.
My vote drops. My vote rocks. My vote rocks. My vote rocks.
Welcome back to My Vote Rocks. We are trying to figure out what young India thinks about a range of issues, and right now it's on the basic bijli, sadak, paani, toilet type issues right now, which they all feel are the single most important thing in determining their voting. We had 98% saying that infrastructure is either the single most important or one of the most important factors that is going to determine their vote. Well, before I took a break, I was asking people how many of them agree with the comment, which yes, Narendra Modi, the BJP's Prime Ministerial candidate, has said it right now, but we've also heard Jairam Ramesh and others saying that they first came up with it, which is that toilets are more important than temples. How many people agree? In this room it was unanimous, 100%. Here's what people voted online on this. So, all of you who feel that toilets are more important than this, is that why do you feel that way?
Actually, it's just not the toilet, but the quality of toilet should be is important, because toilets are there. People do not go there because of the quality. That is the infrastructure.
Right, fine. Yeah, the lady here.
So I guess toilets are important because, you know, first of all, cleanliness is the main factor. And the other day I was telling my friend that the main thing which I have noticed, mainly whenever we go somewhere, we see washrooms only for guys, not for girls, never for women, because, you know, like, it's the main necessity for everyone.
And can I tell you, that's particularly true in schools, and as you know, we've been running this campaign on putting toilets for girl children in schools. Single biggest reason why people drop out of school.
That's what I have noticed, and I want that development to happen soon.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the main issue.
Do you want to vote on that basis?
Yes.
I believe that temples are less important because I can believe in God in my heart and go about with my life. But I cannot believe in my heart that there are good toilets and there is a good mall and go on with my life. I cannot do that.
Okay. Another round of applause for her. Fine. Mr. Pathak, how do you answer what everyone here seems to be saying, that at the end of the day, and this ties up with what you're saying, sanitation, toilets, these are basic human needs. Human facilities should be there for this, and everyone should have access to this. How do you react to this?
I feel very happy to know that all are having the same feeling that toilets are more important. Suppose I am Jairam Ramesh told also, and now Modi ji has told also. Now just somebody is going to temple and he feels call of nature. Whether he would like to go to temple or go to call of nature, that you can decide, and that will tell you which is important. So therefore, you can wait for temple, going to worship, to prayer, but you cannot wait for a minute. So this is most important. Toilet comes first. My house had a toilet, the temple, sorry, and no toilet. So we used to go outside for defecation. So my mother used to go, my grandmother used to go, my sisters used to go outside for defecation. We had temples inside the house. So the question is, there is no any comparison between toilets and temple. Toilet is most important thing. And also, when you feel, suppose somebody asked for buttered shawl, when you feel happy, he said, in the morning my bowel is cleaned. Therefore, the toilet is most important. There is no question. There is no any, religious feeling, and there is no any political issue.
Fair enough. Okay, Mr. Pathak. Rajiv, I mean, how difficult do you think it would be to be able to give basic sanitation facilities to, I mean, you look at it, even the big cities, the capital city now, you're seeing, at least in cities like Delhi, you're starting to see public conveniences now on every second road. But how difficult should something like this be, and why can't this be a priority for the governments?
I don't think it's a difficult situation at all. In any case, one of the speakers very rightly said that 50% of all major cities are either slums or unauthorized colonies. I think the first step which the government can take is to provide toilets in them, and that's something which can be done easily across. You'll find a lot of public-private partnership coming here, even on CRS basis. Corporate responsibility would allow that, yes, if there is a scheme to provide toilets, everyone would come forward. The better thing, of course, would be for governments to realize that state machinery has not been able to provide enough housing in the cities, and therefore to regularize colonies would be much more an easier option, and then provide all infrastructure for sanitation, for roads, for water supply and electricity, which will be both beneficial to the citizens as well as much more remunerative to the local governments also.
Okay. Sam, this is going to become a toilet election. Perhaps it should.
Well, except that they all seem to agree with each other, so it's not much of a point on which you can differentiate.
So why aren't they putting... then perhaps you should have every single candidate and every single party saying, how many toilets did you put into my neighborhood?
That's the
Count
point.
them, go out and count them, we'll vote for you.
It's not just about saying we want toilets. It's
And
what
clean
you're
toilets, as
actually
you
going
said,
to do
functional
about it.
toilets, yeah.
It's actually and how you hold MPs, individual MPs and parties to account. It's not just what they say, it's what they do.
Actually, the MP lads, with 2 crores, you could put a lot of toilets.
Yeah.
In individual areas.
The funding is always available. The question here is, you know, toilets are taboo. People love talking about them when we discuss it like this.
How's it taboo? We spent 25 minutes on national television discussing toilets.
Well done.
So, you know,
how
taboo could it be?
Well done. But in government circles,
you've done an entire campaign on putting toilets into girls.
There is a basic understanding gap. There's a gap in understanding how toilets work. There is no distinction between public toilets and community toilets to begin with. Mr. Pathak will know in depth the way in which these two things work. There is absolutely no consideration of menstrual waste in toilets. So even when toilets for women are made, there's absolutely nothing provided for menstrual waste. No one wants to talk about it. So while we might talk about toilets in a kind of general thing because we have toilets at home, there's some basic things of using a community toilet that people don't get. The third thing is, I think between temples and toilets, I don't think it's really a government's business to build temples. I think that people can do themselves quite happily and they'll want to.
I think what both Jairam and Mr. Modi were saying is our priorities need to be in different areas.
So allow me a little bit of rhetoric as well. Okay. The third point is, everything in this discussion about toilets boils down to basic human dignity. You cannot imagine how undignified, so if she felt bad when she was watching someone do it, can you imagine how the lack of dignity for the person who is defecating in the open?
Right.
So I think the seriousness
and the
of that,
not just the loss of dignity, the follow-up of what happens then, the health hazards,
of course,
the spread of disease.
Growth, stunting growth for children. I mean, it's been, open defecation has been directly linked to that.
Okay, so we've all decided now. So this is one of the things that everyone's going to vote on. Infrastructure is really important. But before I take another break, any guesses as to what the opinion poll threw up as the single biggest reason which is hampering Indian infrastructure? Any thoughts out here? Guesses? Somebody said corruption out there. Okay, another view from you.
It is said about Indian roads that you need 3 things to drive on Indian roads. These are good horns, good brakes and good luck. So that's the kind of reputation Indian roads hold. It has the largest network of roads, India has it, but I think it's time to improve the quality.
Okay, fine. I'll get one view from that gentleman out there.
I was supposed to do a project on land degradation a couple of weeks ago. So I went down to Yamuna Bank on the other side where there are a lot of nurseries down there. I've met some people who are living in cages. I mean literal cages. A 7 feet by 5 feet steel cage. They didn't have a washroom. I went and asked them whether they had washrooms. They said that the government did not provide any and they had to attend their nature's call in open. I'm pretty sure boys can do it, but girls I'm not so sure.
Okay.
That is one problem.
Okay, so the single biggest reason as per the opinion poll on what's hampering Indian infrastructure, and I think many people out here guessed it, 63% said corruption. That's the single biggest problem. You get corruption out of the way, infrastructure will be almost automatically sorted out. 20% said lack of political will. 8% said lack of public pressure. So, we're going to take a break and we're going to see if those are the issues that really affect everybody. How can more public pressure be put on? And this is the best time to do it. Nothing like an election to have pressure put on politicians. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
My vote drops. My vote rocks. My vote rocks. My vote rocks.
Welcome back. So, alright, we're all really concerned about the level of infrastructure. We're concerned about the lack of sanitation, the lack of hygiene, the lack of toilets, the lack of good roads, and of course all the other things like power and water as well. So, what can everybody do about it? That's the first thing which we should ask ourselves. What can we do about it? So, well, first of all, we asked people in this opinion poll, would you personally be willing to join a clean drains program? Would you be personally willing to spend time in cleaning up the city? How many here in the audience, honestly tell me, I'm going to note down your names, numbers and addresses. How many of you are going to personally be willing to do it? Sam is, Madhav is, how about the rest of you? You're not. Why are you not?
I think if an honest answer has to be given, I think if people are actually called tomorrow, you will see that half of the people who've raised the green flag here will not actually turn up.
So you're just more honest than everyone else. Okay. Who wants to disagree with him? Okay. One second. They want to disagree with you.
I am kind of already doing it. In campus also, whenever I see litter anywhere, I'm actually doing it still. So it really disturbs
fine.
me.
Yeah, we are actually doing it. We were having a project in our college and we just went to some of the slums and all. We discussed whatever infrastructure problems they had and we made a documentary and we also referred it to the PWD.
Okay, so now that all of you are volunteering, and I'm happy to hear this, because this is what the result of the opinion poll was. Let me go and see what the opinion poll said about it. So when we asked people out there, how many of you would personally be willing to do something about it and be willing to join a clean drains program? 89% said yes. 89%. Mumbai slightly less, they said 79% said yes, but in general 89% said yes and 11% said no. So now we're going to hold you all to it. So, Mr. Pathak, final thoughts from you. With people saying we are willing to help in making a change, how can people actually help?
I was just 25 years when I started. Now I am 70.
Okay, Mr. Pathak.
So the question is, youth today, if they are mobilized, yeah,
right,
they can be motivated, educated, and they can certainly participate.
Okay, Mr. Pathak, your points are well noted. Thank you so much, sir, for having joined us, and thank you so much for the efforts that you have been making. It's been great to have you with us. Rajiv, let me get final thoughts from you. How can people who feel that they want to make a change themselves, how can they do it?
I think let's not only pay a tribute, but let's honor people like Mr. Pathak, who have really led a campaign all through their lives, and I think we owe it to him. Number two, in schools in Delhi, 2,000 schools have eco clubs which are barely funded by the government, but carry on their own steam, and I think that kind of awareness is something very difficult to build for the government. It has to come in with people's participation, with children's participation, and believe me, there's a huge force out there of young people who are actually much more environmentally, hygienically sensitive than perhaps even what we were in our generation.
Okay, Rajiv, thanks a lot for joining us. We are almost flat out of time, so maybe just one line each from you, Madhav.
Well, where I started, broad-based. It needs to be broad-based. It's wonderful to see this lack of cynicism. But I think the 2% of your poll that said health and education, I think that's equally critical. Because the more people have access to education and good health services, the better citizens they become.
Sam.
And just to say, the media have a big role as well. We should, for instance, be publishing how access to basic sanitation has improved in individual constituencies across the country. That means that you can make decisions based on what's actually been happening in places where you get to vote.
Okay, fine. And can I just say something, that if all of you think you can make a difference, the single most obvious way is, of course, by just simply going out and voting. How many people in this room think that by voting you can actually make a difference? How many people feel that? Okay, with one notable exception out there and one there, by and large one more there. So there are 3 holdouts, but otherwise by and large in this room, everyone feels that by voting their vote will make a difference, and that actually matches what the opinion poll has said. And interestingly, there's been a change in just the month of September. The first time we asked people, because we've been doing this in waves, the first wave when we went out and asked people, early September, just before we were starting the show, 81% said that they thought their vote would make a difference. Last round when we did this, which was the end of September, 83% said their vote will make a difference. So it's an overwhelming majority, people who think their votes are going to make a difference, and now we do expect to see a 83% turnout at the least in the elections. Thank you all so much for having joined us. It's been wonderful having you with us. We'll be back again in the next episode of My Vote Rocks very soon.
My Vote Rocks.